Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard. Welcome back to a weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And this week there are 16 stocks on my radar. I'm kind of casting a wide net here, looking for stocks that showed RS during the market pullback last week. And these are stocks that I still think have a lot of potential going forward. So overall in this video, we'll talk through both the fundamentals and technicals of all the stocks on this list. And let me know down below in the comments what you think as we go through each stock. And also let me know one idea that you have for next week. To start things off, we've got AFRM Holdings, ticker symbol AFRM, and Ray and I just made a really in-depth video going through the technicals of this one, so definitely highly recommend checking that out. It should be popping up right now after this video, and there's also a link in the description. But regardless, really strong sales growth in the most recent 4 quarters. Not really strong estimates, and estimate revisions are down, but I'll be watching to see if these increase over the next few days and weeks. And overall, going over to the fund ownership, you've already got 250 funds in this one and one high quality fund. And you can see the super strong gap ups. This one was on the announcement of the partnership with Amazon, and this one was on earnings. So overall, I love the huge volume coming in on this day with a strong closing range, especially considering the general market was kind of pulling back at this point. So it's really showing RS. And with this volume, institutions are really not trying to hide that they're buying the stock, and I'll be watching to see if this kind of sets up some inside days, then pushes through the high volume close or this high, or just kind of holds up better if the market continues to correct. So that's one I'm watching very carefully. And obviously we've got a lot of resistance levels potentially right here, as well as 146.9. So that's AFRM. And once again, if you want a really in-depth analysis of this stock, both in terms of technicals and fundamentals, check out the video that is linked down below in the description. So that is AFRM. And moving on, we've got Beam Therapeutics. Not really any fundamental growth numbers to speak of, but I like how it's setting up within this base. This is kind of the top here. It did get a little bit extended and pulled back dramatically, but it's setting back up and forming a little bit of a VCP pattern here. This is one contraction, another one, and now most recently here. And it did sell off a little bit last Tuesday, I believe the 8th, but then held that 21 EMA and had 2 inside days to end out last week. Looking at the annual estimates, once again, not much to speak of, but this is kind of an overall play on the gene editing sector. And you'll notice that I also have a few other names, NTLA as well as Edit, on this list within that same group. So overall, nice growth in fund ownership, but no high quality funds investing into the stock just yet, but overall an RS rating of 97. Moving on, we've got Bumble, another stock kind of forming out its first primary base institutional due diligence phase. And you've got decent sales growth the past 4 quarters, around 30 to 40%. Annual estimates are not good for 2022, down 85% with estimate revisions down. So I definitely want to see this trend kind of changing here. But you've got a whole bunch of funds already in the stock and a whole bunch of high quality funds in there as well from the IBD Mutual Fund Index. So in terms of fundamentals, you've got the internet content group being extremely strong at this point. And you've got that strong fundamental backing from these large institutions. So as for the chart, it's right up against a 60.34 level, which is also the anchored VWAP from the IPO high right here, I believe. And you did have a secondary announced around 64.5, I believe, and it closed above that level on Friday. So I believe that secondary is done the 15th. So keep an eye on that level. And if this kind of forms out some inside days here and then pushes through this area on volume, that could be a really good spot to get in to this young IPO. Moving on, we've got Cook, another recent IPO, and it had a gap down on earnings. Earnings surprise was plus 250%, but you can see that earnings overall dropped 42% year over year. So in terms of annual estimates, still pretty good. Estimate revisions are up. No fund information just yet. But on this day, even though it was a gap down, I really like the strong close. And we did have a nice undercut of all these lows, stopping everybody out. And then a really strong rally. And I'll be watching for fall through this high. Or if it does some inside days, that would actually be even better, right above this high volume close. And then pushes off that level, managing risk right at this swing low. So that is Cook. And moving on, we've got CURV. Looking at CURV's fundamentals, you can see really strong earnings and sales growth the past 2 quarters. Great estimates for this year, not so much fall through in 2023, but the estimate revisions are up. And in terms of fund ownership, not too much information just yet. This is pretty recent, but you do have one high quality fund investing into this stock. And the reason I'm watching this one is because of the strong reaction after earnings. on the highest volume ever with a strong closing range. Then on Friday, along with the S&P 500, this one didn't act too well, but if this forms up here and lets the 21 EMA kind of curl under price here, that would be very constructive and potentially start something through this high volume close, managing risk right at that swing low. So that was CURV. And next up, we've got DEN. And overall, you can see really strong earnings and sales the past 2 quarters. Great estimates for both this year and the next, with the estimate revisions being up. A nice increase in fund ownership, but no high quality funds in here just yet. And this has been very strong since its IPO base, stage 1 cup with handle. And now it's forming a stage 2 with a standard pivot of 75.2. And you could draw an early DTL right here. Didn't act too well on Friday, but is holding up above the 21 EMA at this point. So I'm watching for some type of tightness here and then an explosion to the upside, managing risk at a swing low. So that is DEN. And moving on, we've got DELO, a recent earnings gap up that is pretty much holding this high volume close. You can see it pull back right to that on Friday as well. It's also holding a rising 21 EMA. But looking at its fundamentals, fantastic earnings, sales margins going back the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for this year and the next in terms of annual EPS. Estimate revisions are up as well. 170 funds, but no high quality funds in here just yet. So for this one, I'm watching for some tightness and for it to hold above this high volume close. And then you could buy a undercut and reclaim of that level or push through on strength. And once again, managing risk right at that breakout low day. So that is DELO. Moving on, we've got Edit, another gene editing company. Not too many growth fundamentals the past 3 quarters. Annual estimates aren't anything to speak about, but you do have a decent amount of growth in fund ownership and 1 high quality fund in there as well. Looking at the chart, this is an improper base, this large base here. It declined from almost 100 all the way down to 29.35, but it is starting to move up the right-hand side. It's about mid-level within this base, right at pretty much the level where it exploded this past time. And I'm not saying it's going to do that again. This move right here had a lot more power. This was a power play, but we are moving nicely off the bottom of this base. So overall, consolidating nicely above the 21 EMA. They've got a consolidation pivot at 68.79 and also the highs of this tightness. So a push through that on volume could be a buy point, and you definitely want to see some fall through on this breakout attempt. You can see that we basically had an inside day, then a downside reversal, and that just kind of dropped the stock back into this structure. So that is Edit. I want to see a breakout on volume and definitely see some fall through and push towards that 80 level. So that is EDIT. And moving on, we've got FIGS, another recent IPO. Decent growth in terms of earnings, sales margins going back the past 4 quarters. Not too much to say in terms of annual EPS. They are supposed to be profitable in 2022. Looking at the fund ownership, you can see 199 funds are already in this stock, and you've got 4 high quality funds in there as well. Looking at the chart, it had a nice run from its IPO base here and now has formed a stage 1 cup with handle with a standard pivot of 48.63. And it has pulled back pretty sharply the past 5 days or so, along with the overall market, but did show some nice RS on this day, a bullish outside day. So I'm watching for fall through or maybe some tightness inside days and then a push through here, putting your stop at the low of that breakout day. But I like how it's holding a rising 21 EMA. So that is FIGS. Moving on, we've got Lululemon, a recent earnings gap up. And you can see very strong earnings, sales margins going back the past 4 quarters. Very strong estimates for this year and the next, and estimate revisions are up. Nice steady increase in fund ownership and 4 high quality funds in there as well. And this overall is a pretty long-term base that's starting to move out of here. And look at that weekly bar. That looks great. A nice outside week here on very high volume. And we'll see if it can push through and continue on with an uptrend. So it might go sideways for a few weeks, but I'm watching for some type of entry, reversal, undercut, and reclaim of a key moving average. But I think it would be very constructive if the market continues downwards and this just kind of goes sideways, holding this low and the 415.34 pivot here. And then when the overall market kind of resumes an uptrend, this could be a nice leader in that resulting move. So that is Lululemon, ticker symbol LULU. And moving on, we've got NTLA. And you can see there's another gene editing stock here. And in terms of growth fundamentals, not too much to say. In terms of annual EPS, it's still not profitable. But you've got a nice steady increase in fund ownership and a whole bunch of high quality funds. I think more of these have been popping up recently within this space. So overall, it's had a strong move on this gap up, now forming a base here above a rising 21 EMA. And I'm watching for a push through these highs, this inside day potentially being an inside day and up starting next week. And this overall base is a little bit VCP-like here, with this last contraction being about 10%. So we'll have to see if it manages to push up here and break out through the 178 pivot. So that is NTLA. And moving on, we've got NVDA, which has been holding up really well given the overall market weakness. Great earnings sales margins the past 4 quarters, great estimates for this year, and some fall through in 2023. Estimate revisions are up, nice increase in fund ownership, and a whole bunch of high quality funds in there as well. And this stock has moved up really nicely from a stage 2 cup with handle, and now is forming out a short-term shelf. You could enter on a DTL break, or potentially a reversal entry or an undercut and reclaim of these lows here, or if the 21 EMA catches up and it just goes tight against a moving average and then starts to move up, that could be another nice entry point. So that is NVDA. Moving on, we've got PLTR forming a stage 1 cup with handle. You've also got a pivot at 27.5. Great earnings and sales the past 2 quarters. Decent estimates for annual EPS next year. Nice increase in fund ownership. There's a big jump from 193 to 514, but you do not have any high quality funds in here just yet. So looking at the chart, I'm watching for some push through these pivots here, or potentially an undercut and reclaim of the 21 EMA, or some type of reversal entry. So that is PLTR. Moving on, we've got Roblox forming out its base here, and you did have a potential early entry on this Friday, but really you want to be catching this right against the 21 EMA as it pushes off that level. So what I'm watching for is some inside days, some tightness to develop, and then a push through 90 and a move up the right hand side of this base. Overall, in terms of earnings sales, you can see decent sales growth the past 4 quarters, basically at 100%, which is very, very impressive. In terms of annual EPS, it's not supposed to be profitable this year or the next. And the most recent EPS estimates are down, which isn't a great sign, but you've got really nice growth in fund ownership and 3 high quality funds in here as well. So as I said, I'm watching for a tightness, some type of breakout, a pullback, undercut and reclaim, those type of entries. Moving on, we've got Snapchat, another stock that had a recent earnings gap up and is now going sideways, forming a little bit of a VCP here under these pivots right here. And overall, really strong earnings sales margins the past 4 quarters. Estimate revisions are up, which is a good sign. It's just supposed to be profitable in 2022. Nice increase in fund ownership and a whole bunch of high quality funds in there as well. So as I said, I'm watching for some breakouts through pivots or potentially an undercut and reclaim of the 21 EMA next week. And I like how it's just going sideways right above stage 2 standard pivot of 73.59. So that is Snapchat. Last on the list, we've got ZI, which has been very frustrating to trade for a lot of people, I'm sure. Overall, great fundamentals in terms of earnings, sales, margins. It's also in a leading group at this point. That's very, very important. Great estimates in terms of annual EPS for this year and the next. And the estimate revisions are up. Nice increase in fund ownership and a whole bunch of high quality funds in there as well. And going over to a weekly chart, it's right at a very important level here, right below, I believe, this green line from the IPO advance phase. And I want to see a push through that level, or potentially an undercut and reclaim of the 21 EMA, or a 2-2 reversal to start next week, and then push through these highs as well. So overall, that is my list going into next week. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And also remember to leave me down below your top idea for next week and the setup that you would use. But with that said, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead, leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.